Welcome to this Gorgias Cloud system tutorial. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create a decision policy for a seller agent using the Gorgias Cloud system. Now, the policy is that normally we sell a product at a high price. You can sell a product at a lower price only if payment is cash, but normally prefer to sell high. Regular customers can be offered a low price. However, in high seasons, you must sell only at high prices. All right. The first task I have to do is to find out what are the options for the decision making. Here it's clear that it's two options. One is to sell at a high price and another to sell at a lower price. So we can identify we have two options. After logging into the Gorgias Cloud system, I get to this execution panel, which however now is empty. I go to my projects by clicking in my projects, and then I can create a new one by pressing the plus icon. Here it will be my seller agent project. Alright, now you see it as a folder here. I can click in the folder and now I have an empty project. I can add files, and you see I have three types of files I can add. The first is a Gorgias decision policy file. Then it's a prologue background file, if I want to have a background knowledge in prologue. And I can also define test scenarios. I will start by the Gorgias file for the seller agent. You don't have to worry about extensions of files. Just give them a name that you like and the extension is added automatically. Alright, now here you are at the editor. The editor wants to help you define your decision policy, giving you four templates. The first template is an argument rule. So you see the argument has a name, supports a position, and can have defeasible premises or non-defeasible premises. Now let's start by defining the position. The first position is to sell a product at a high price. Now, one thing you have to consider here is if your predicate, it will be a prologue predicate, will have parameters. It could be, for example, sell high, no parameters at all. However, when you define decision policies, there are parameters that influence the decision. In this case, I think that the item that is sold, the product, and the agent that wants to buy it are two very important parameters. And another parameters, of course, will be to sell high. So you see the parameters start by capital letter, the product and the agent. However, to sell high is an item, so this starts by a lowercase letter. It's not a parameter. I want to sell high. Now, to sell high, there are no defeasible premises. We can add some non-defeasible premises that define the problem. So an agent requests you to buy an item, a product. Okay, so this is the condition, and an agent has requested the product, and the rule is to sell at a high price. Now you see I have another thing to set is the argument name, the rule name. The rules must have names in Gorgias, and the names must start with a lowercase letter. So I would say that it's rule number 1. And here I can also add the parameters of the decision. It's useful because you will see later that I will use this label. This is a label of the rule and its name. I will use this name to give it priority over other rules. So now the rule is complete. I press enter and move on to define the next rule. So the next item in my policy is to be able to sell also low. So I will copy this rule and paste it. This will be rule number 2. And this rule is about selling low. Now, to define the rule for selling low, I have to think what is the condition that unlocks this possibility. Going back to my policy, to my requirements, I see that I can sell a product at a lower price only if payment is cash. So this is the condition that unlocks this possibility. Of course, even in this case, I normally sell high, but we'll see how to define that in Gorgias later. So to unlock the possibility of selling low, we don't just need the request, we also need the requirement that the agent will pay cash for this product. All right, so now rule number 2 is ready. Let's move on now to define the context in which we sell at high price and at low price. So we have a normal decision to sell high even if payment is cash. This is written here. Regular customers can be offered the low price. It says can. It doesn't say are always offered. This is a trick. And in high season, we must sell at high price. All right, so let's try to somehow formalize this decision policy and look at scenarios. So the default scenario is sell high. Then I have a scenario to pay cash where again I want to sell high, although it unlocks the possibility for selling low. So now I have to set the case that even when the agent pays cash, the product will be sold at a high price. So I have to now add another rule here. I will again use the template because now I'm going to define, you see the preference rule name. It will be my first preference. I will copy the product and agent variables. I prefer, which rule? I prefer R1 rule over R2 by default. So I don't need defeasible premises and I do not need non-defeasible premises. So by default, I prefer R1 over R2, and this is priority 1 rule. Another rule I must add here is the fact that I prefer, it will be my priority 2, prefer R2 over R1, reverse this preference, when the customer is regular agent. This agent is a regular customer. This is written as a prologue rule, so it needs the sign. All right, so now I have a preference default for R1 and the preference for R2 if the customer is regular. And you see, this is what I have here. When someone is regular, I have a preference for selling high, but also a preference for selling low. So this is a non-deterministic scenario. Both choices are possible. To extend this, I have the context of high season, where I will sell high. Okay, so let's see how we model high season, and this time I will not use non-defeasible. I will try to set it as a defeasible knowledge. So now I have another rule. This is a priority over priorities. This is a context rule. So I will use the name C1, where I prefer priority rule 1 over priority rule 2. Priority rule 1 says to prefer to sell high. Priority rule 2 says to prefer sell low to a regular customer. So here I prefer to sell high, the preference for selling high over preference for selling low, when I have a high season. Now I will model this as a defeasible predicate, and it's a predicate without parameters, high season. So now we have seen how to use argument rules and how to use preference rule. Now let's see what is complement. Complement is the possibility of the developer to define that two options are complementary, which means one attacks the other. Here you see to sell high or to sell low, one is not the negation of the other, so by default they are not conflicting. By putting them here as complementary, so option 1 is to sell high, option 2 is to sell low, and there are no conditions. Now high is complementary to low. In order to be complete, I have to do the reverse, to say that low also attacks the high option. So I have to reverse it and say that also low is complementary to high. So now we've seen also the complements. Now let's see what is abducible. Abducible is the possibility to define a predicate that must be divisible, to be able to be assumed by the decision theory when taking decisions. In our case here, we only have high season as a divisible predicate, so I will use this. So high season is something that can be assumed. There are no preconditions. And if I do that, it's good to also define as abducible its negation, so that both possibilities, if we don't know if it's high season or not, to be able to assume that it is or it isn't. Sometimes we want to assume only that something holds, unless we know that definitely it doesn't hold. For this scenario, we can assume both that it's high season or not high season if we don't know. So now the theory is complete and we have shown all the templates. Now, to be able to use this theory, I need to be able to instantiate the predicates that are used as non-divisible knowledge. So I do it using the dynamic keyword of prologue. So I have the request predicate that takes two parameters, the pay cash predicate that again takes two parameters, and the regular predicate that takes one parameter. I put a dot at the end, and now the theory is ready to save. I press this button, or save and upload if it's the first time. Now that it's saved, I can open the file and now consult it to test the theory. Now the file is consulted. I can see it here if I want, and here I can add scenarios. Let's say, for example, that an agent requests, for example, a hat is requested by agent Mary. And now I can ask the question to sell the hat to Mary, and wonder at which X, you see I put a capital X there, starts with capital, so it's a variable, high or low, and I press enter. And now this is the Gorgias response, that X is high, the instantiation is with high, X takes the value high, and the statement to sell the hat to Mary at a high price is supported by the fact that Mary requested the hat. Just by that, I can have an argument for selling it at a high price. You see there are no responses for low price. No responses. We also see in the internal explanation here the rule that has fired, the argument that has been used for taking this decision. It's R1, rule R1. Now let's extend our scenario and say that for the hat, Mary will pay with cash. You see? And this is another part of my scenario. I can clear the panel here, and I can give the possibility for the system to give me more responses. So let's see if I can sell, at which price should I sell the hat to Mary. You see again, I only have one possibility to sell at high. So even though this rule R2 unlocks the possibility to pay low, the default priority here makes it only possible for selling high. And you see here the default priority is not shown because it doesn't have any context. Now let me add more context. Mary is a regular customer, regular Mary. All right, let's see what will happen now. I clear the panel. I also want to get 3 answers. So at which price? Oh, now I have many answers, huh? So you see here the first answer is to sell high. And to sell high by assuming that it's high season. You see, you remember this was an abducible. So we have this assumption. We have C1, the rule C1 with high season. We have priority 1, the default priority to sell high, and we also have R1, the original argument for selling high to Mary. And you see this explanation here. To sell high supported by the fact that she requested it. Now this reason is stronger than giving her a low price for selling cash and being a regular. However, you must explore the possibility of high season. Is it high season? This is solution 1. Solution 2 also proposes to sell high, and now this time without assumptions. Without assuming anything, as it is, we have an option for selling high. Solution 3 proposes to sell low, assuming that it's not a high season. And when it's not a high season, you remember that we can sell low to a regular customer. This is supported by PR2. You see, it's the priority rule with regular. R2, the rule that says that by paying cash we can have a low price. And now the instantiation of X is low. To sell low is supported by the fact that Mary requested the hat and she wants to pay cash for it. And this is stronger than the reason of selling high because it's not high season. Okay, and that's it. Now let's suppose that we know that it is high season. We have to add that to the scenario. We don't add that as we did with simple prologue predicates because this is a divisible knowledge. So in order to add that, we must add it as a rule. It must have a label, for example, knowledge 1. The knowledge is that it's high season. And there are no requirements, there are no conditions. We know that. So this is the way to add the rule. I add it to the scenario. You see what I added here. If I want, I can delete items for the scenario and check it out. I will clear the panel and try to wonder if I can, to find out how I can sell something, the hat to Mary. And you see here I have 3 solutions, and in all solutions X is high. The first one is the one I want. I have C1, K1, you see, the high season knowledge is added to the argument. This is my argument. So it's C1, K1, PR1, and R1 for selling high. Thank you for following this tutorial. I can now go back to my projects. If I want to start again, I can unload everything, go back to my projects, open the seller agent. And if I want to try different scenarios, I don't want to write them again one by one. I can add here a scenario file, my scenario 1, define it as a test scenario, and I can add here requests, a hat, Nikos requests a hat, and now I have to add the dot here. This is a normal prolog file, huh? And Nikos is going to pay cash for it. Cash for the hat. Okay, so let's say that this is a scenario, my scenario number 1. I save and upload it. And now if I consult my theory, I don't have to write the scenario here. I can consult it from here. And now you see it's consulted, and I can even look at it to remember it if I don't remember it. And again, I can wonder if I can ask. I can put everything here as a variable. The product to the agent for what strategy. And see here that I have a solution where the product is hat, agent is Nikos, and solution is high. And this is the argument R1 to give me a high price. Thank you very much for following this tutorial.